So, Barry, you've been a frequent collaborator of Spike Lee's over the last 30 years. When he called you up and told you the story of BlacKkKlansman, what did you think?
Well, first he sent me the script. He sent me the script without telling me anything much about it. Because every once in a while he'll send me scripts and say, "Take a look at this. Tell me what you think." Um, and um, Before Spike and Ken got in there to do their rewrite, um, I thought that their rewrite just took it into a whole different level, to where it worked on so many other cinematic levels, and I thought that they were able to add some depth to characters that wasn't quite there. So I got excited, and could see how they could do something. This could be something pretty interesting, pretty interesting. And then I sat through the table read of the script when they brought in the actors, and what was that? And I don't know what month that was.
I don't know either.
I think
Yeah,
right before the beginning of the shoot.
yeah.
You know,
Well, it's such an interesting concept, and the approach to the movie is interesting as well, because I mean, it's done as a satire. And so, I mean, there's a very delicate tone that the movie has to balance. Can you talk about, as the editor, how you walk that line between, you know, comedy and the more serious aspects of the movie?
well, both Spike and I like to use comedy. It brings it certainly is part of entertainment, but also brings in a level of reality, quite frankly. If everything is just flat and dramatic, um, then there is an ups and downs, and a lot of times you're writing something that is more flat, and both of us liked to move the emotions around. And of course, it's you're also using comedy at times to make some very serious points. You
Mhm.
know, and sometimes to get into a character. Like when John David Washington is listening to the Kwame Ture speech. He's there as a cop, but you can see little by little he's getting caught up, right? And at some point, he says, right on," but he's like really sort of very self-conscious. And then there's that chant at the end, "All power to all the people, all power," and at first he's like, and then he gets into it and joins it. And it's funny, and it's also says so much about him and him at that moment in time,
Mhm.
and in that space.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, I
you
mean, you
guys have
guys have
been
been
doing
doing
that
that
since the
since
very
the very
beginning. I
beginning.
mean, I
I
think
think
about
about
"Do the
"Do
Right
the Right
Thing,"
Thing,"
and
and right.
it's a
It's a
very
very
serious
serious
subject
subject
matter,
matter,
but
but
a
a
lot of
lot
it
of it
is
is
very
very
funny.
funny. A
And
lot of funny stuff.
yeah, I mean, I guess when you're laughing along with these characters, it makes the tragedy at the end even more tragic.
But also, life is like that. Life is full of humor,
Mhm,
and for me, it just feels more real, and
mhm,
it feels much more like you're in that space with these people, and you're in their lives. Because I think that if you don't know enough about that space and time and those people, that you can actually create funny moments
mhm.
within context, then maybe you don't know enough about 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 those people or what they're going through. I mean, towards the end of the movie, there was some pretty funny stuff, and we just finally felt like, man, this is really beginning to be confusing, and it's also beginning to kill the impact of that explosion. At some point towards the end, we gotta leave the comedy behind. Maybe we can come back into it, but for a while we gotta leave it behind, and we had to cut stuff out that it's sometimes hard to do, because you're looking at it and think, yeah, but this is so good, but there's a bigger issue.
Right.
Right.
Having
Having
worked with
worked with
Spike
Mike
so
so
many
many
times,
times,
can you
can you
talk
just
a bit
talk a bit
about
about
what
what
your
your
process is like in getting a first cut together and then in working with him on the edits.
Well, you know, we see all the dailies together. Spike really wants that, and for me, it's great. It's just great to get his point of view, see what he likes, what he doesn't like, and sometimes to understand this is what I'm going after here. And then he pretty much lets me cut. And during the course of the shooting, he wants to see what I'm doing, but you're still a little bit behind by the end of the shoot. And in the case of BlacKkKlansman, we were about 50% behind because we had to catch up on dailies. And so over the course of that the Christmas break, because we broke right before Christmas, I cut the second part of the film and then brought it to him for him to see on January 8th. But we've done so much together, and we'd already seen the dailies together. There is a shorthand that we have. I'm not going to go. Usually, I don't go out and cut something that he is like, what is this? Wait a second. How could you possibly make these choices? You know, we're sort of long over that. You know, I'm going to get it in the ballpark. And with BlacKkKlansman, I got it really close to the ballpark, really in the ballpark. Because when he saw it on January 8th, he said, we're going after Cannes. And that meant that between January 8th and the beginning of March, which is 2 months, we had to really have a cut that we believed in, that that was ready to be shown to the festival directors. And beyond that, they were going to take a little bit of time to decide, because that's normal. And we couldn't wait for them to come back and say, you're in or you're not in order to keep going forward to finish the movie, to get the score done, to be well into the sound edit. You know, so, you know, by the end of March, when they said, you're in, I mean, we were so far along and getting all that post stuff done, you know. But and the way we could do that is only because there's so much history there between us, and we can work fast. And there's not going to be a lot of missteps between us. And I'm not going to have a lot of missteps in terms of what he's looking for.
Right. There's a lot of really standout sequences in the movie. I just want to ask you about a couple of them from an editorial standpoint.
Sure.
You mentioned the Kwame Ture speech, and there's this really great kind of thing you do where you see the faces of the audience members, and they're kind of laid one on top of the other, and there's these big close-ups. Can you just talk a bit about cutting that together?
Yeah, we'd actually cut the whole sequence, you know, and I'd cut the whole sequence. You know, when I first read the script, I thought, well, I think we're ever going to have this whole sequence, this whole speech in from a character who is not a main character of the movie, right? You know, 10 minutes into the movie, we have this 8-minute long speech. You know, it's like, wow. But Corey Hawkins did such a great job. And we found that thing with Ron that I mentioned before, how it's affecting him. But it was after Spike had seen the film that he then said, okay, let's work on these portraits, because they'd shot all of them separately. And they shot them at the same time they were shooting the speech. And so he had a spot where he wanted to begin them. And then he kind of let me go, like, okay, try some things. He basically said, he didn't want to go through and say, the next one goes here, this one goes here, this one goes here. And then it was a matter of going in and finding those moments where I thought it was appropriate, you know, and then playing with them and layering them and making and creating moods that weren't always there, and creating a tableau between different faces and getting these different faces to work together. As you know, they are pretty much bodiless face heads, you know, but they had to have that sense that these people are right there in the crowd and and being touched and moved.
Yeah. There's another, and also, I mean, just to put a cap on that, it's such a really interesting way and really powerful way to, you hear what he's talking about in terms of the way that black people are portrayed in movies at that time, and then you see these really big, beautiful black faces contrasted with this stuff about Tarzan movies and things like
Yeah.
that, and it's just a really powerful way of expressing that.
Yeah. And when I first laid it out, you know, and my moves and the like, I mean, I'm doing it on an Avid. So I felt them to be crude. And I also I'm an editor, I'm not like a visual effects guy. So I had thought that Randy Balsmeyer, who I think you probably know who he is, who's the great visual effects artist who works on everything in New York. And Randy always works with us. And I thought Randy would come in and redo everything, you know, fix the big problems, you know,
Yeah.
on crude editing. And and so Randy, when he began to talk about, okay, well, maybe we can do this, maybe we can try this, and Spike was like, no, 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 no. No, you just clean up what's been done here. I was like, wow, really? Really? We're not even going to see what the possibility is. And Spike goes, no, 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 man. This is working. If it's working, we're staying with it. We don't need to work anymore. This works. And so I said, you know, okay. And Randy was too like, okay.
Yeah.
Very satisfying for that, but I was surprised.
Yeah. There's another moment that stands out that happens about midway through the movie where you have Harry Belafonte giving a speech to all these students, and you're intercutting that with this Klan initiation rally, and they're watching Birth of a Nation, and all that. Can you just talk a bit about cutting that sequence together and making it flow in a really effective way?
Thank you. Yeah, you know, in the script they were big blocks. A big block of that Waco, Texas story from 1950. Then a big block of the Klan induction. Then another big block. Um, you know, I never thought that was going to play out in those big blocks. I don't think even Spike ever thought they were going to play out in those big blocks. But I had the luxury that they had shot the footage when I could sit down to cut it. And so certain things like where Harry Belafonte is saying, you know, and all I could do was get myself to someplace, hide. And I went up above the shoe shine parlor and looked out. And there's this great shot that they have of Ron Stallworth walking into that attic room. And there's that window, and he's not going to look out. And that's a moment that I thought, yeah, I can tie these two guys together. Now they become one with the witnesses. And then there's other emotional things that happen that you find, such as that moment where David Duke is coming down the line with the holy water, and you know, for lack of a better word, and then there's this stuff that Harry Belafonte is saying all I can do is sit and watch, right? And that is what Adam is doing. Adam Driver, when David Duke gets to Adam Driver, you know, he just looks up at Adam. And again, it's this thing of emotionally creating, you know, blending the lines. I was constantly trying to blend the lines, you know, between these two, and these really sort of dynamically opposed scenes, and have that flow going. You know, when you go into the Birth of a Nation scene where the local Klan is just so fired up, you know, and Harry is talking about what a damage this scene, this film had done, and why there wouldn't have been a Waco, Texas without this movie. And just, you just have to still create a rhythm in which you don't feel, oh, we're here, oh, we're here, oh, we're here. It's got to be like this. All the way down to the very end where in the student union, they are chanting Black Power. And I pulled that chant over this shot of David Duke about to give a toast. Because I saw that Topher had taken a really long time before doing the toast. And I thought, oh, this is great. I'm going to use that time. It's usually the kind of footage that you just throw away.
Mm-hmm.
But we just played it over, this descending Black Power chant over the Klan. Yeah. And I love that stuff.
Yeah, it's a very powerful scene. And I also wanted to ask you about the ending of the movie, where you use all this footage from Charlottesville and the awful thing that happened there. Can you talk a bit about putting that together and using that as a cap at the end of the movie?
Sure, it wasn't in the script. It happened in August as they were in pre-production, and Spike said that it was going to. He knew right then we're going to use this. It's going to go at the end of the movie, but he said, "Don't. We're not going to do anything until we have the movie cut in a place that I feel pretty strong." And that happened the first time I showed it to him. And from January 8th, he was saying, okay, we got to get the Charlottesville footage. We got to cut it. And we had a conversation about it, about that it really couldn't just become an addendum, a whole new scene unto itself, where we're developing, this is what happened there. It really still had to remain a part of the movie, and even going into it had to feel seamless. Mm-hmm. Seamless. So you go from that Klan cross burning to the Klan with the tiki torches chanting, "Jews will not replace us," and it really had to feel as this was one. And we both knew that it really couldn't take a lot of time, that we had to move through this fast, but you couldn't have, it would have been wrong to make you feel, give you that sense that, wow, these guys are just flying through this scene. And still you had to take it in and feel it. But there's that balancing of, is this long enough? Is it too long? We both felt it really had to be tight. Neither one of us knew that David Duke had been there until Judy Ailey, our great film researcher that we worked with for so many decades, said, "Are you interested in the David Duke speech?" What David Duke speech? What? And then she brought in the McIntyre Park Duke speech, and I was like, oh, this is great. But also one thing that was so great about it is Topher Grace had delivered such a great performance as David Duke. You really felt that this is the same guy 40 years later. Mm-hmm. This is the same guy. There's no disconnect of, oh, this is the real guy. Yeah, Topher, David Duke, yeah, it was so different. It just felt the same. And then also the fact that we had that David Duke sort of tape playing whenever they were in the cars, which I thought was incredibly effective in terms of that sense of constant indoctrination.
Yeah.
And then we had to get to the car crash and the murder of Heather Heyer, and actually that was a spot at the end of the movie where Spike sometimes really has to slow me up. He has to slow me up. Yeah. Like, no, we're sitting here. And we have that flag that comes up that's upside down, and man, it was really Spike who said, we're sitting on that flag before we even began to fade out on it. It's going to be, and they said it's going to be a long fade. We sit on that thing for 10 seconds.
Mhm.
And, you know, that spike, that's 100% spike. Because me, I'd been like, yeah, okay. No, yeah, 3 seconds. I think we got to fade out. Right?
Yeah.
And he says, no, 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 no. People have got to digest this. We got to give these people a moment just to sit, digest this movie, digest Charlottesville, digest it. Give them a moment. Give them a moment. Just be patient. You know, and it's great that he has that ability, because oftentimes my sense of it is, let's go, let's go, let's go, let's
Yeah.
keep going.
Well, it's a really powerful reminder of just how, you know, diligent people need to stay, and how these things aren't in the past, even though this movie takes place 40 years ago,
Right.
there's still problems that we need to, work out.
And
And
always, I think always,
yeah.
always.
Before I let you go, I wanted to ask you, early on in your career, you received an Oscar nomination for a documentary that you made called The War at Home. Could you just talk a little bit about what that did for your career, and how that kind of set you on your path to becoming who you are today?
Well, I was young. It was
Mhm.
my first film, and I made this film with Glenn Silver. It actually just got re-released this year.
Yeah.
You know, and um, I'd had a lot of things in mind that I wanted to accomplish in a career, and kind of a lot of them happened that first movie, including getting nominated for an Oscar. And quite frankly, in 1980, I was overwhelmed by it. I was overwhelmed by it, and it was it was simply an overwhelming experience that I kind of crashed after, and didn't work for a couple of years, 2 or 3 years. And I in the meantime, in that during that period, I helped found a distribution company called First Run Features that sort of broke the world for film distribution in American independent films. Um, because just emotionally, had become too much for me, and it all happened too fast, and I wasn't mature, you know. And then Spike and I became friends. I hired him at First Run Features.
Oh, no kidding.
That was his first job, and he'll tell you I gave him his first job. And we became friends during that period of time, and he's the one. And then I started coming back and editing my own documentaries, and he's the one who recognized that I had a skill, in editing. And I mean, I'd cut one scene, and She's Gotta Have It, the scene that he was having trouble with, and and then he wrote in his book that he wrote about the experience of making She's Gotta Have It. He wrote, Barry's going to edit my next movie. He never asked me. He brought it up. I read it in the book, and it was like, oh wow, okay. So actually, for a few years, I just didn't accept myself as an editor, and I thought somebody's going to come in any day, like do the right thing, and I cut Salam Bombay for Mira Nair and Truth or Dare for Madonna, and I really thought that any day that somebody would come in and go, "All right, pal, come on, come on, get away, stand up away from the steam deck, let's go." I'm not an editor, you know. I didn't really accept it until I cut Malcolm X, and in the middle of Malcolm X, I thought, maybe I am an editor, you know.
Yeah. Well, I think you've certainly proved that you are an editor over
Oh,
these last few movies, especially this one. So thank you so much, and congratulations on the film.
thank you. Bye.